Betting on sports can be hard, but hiring Morgan & Morgan is easy. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and more than 1,000 lawyers. Their fee is free until they win. Find out more information at forthepeople.com/bestbets or dial #law, that is #529 from your cell phone, and that is FOR, thepeople.com/bestbets. This is a paid advertisement. And we're from the Low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Neeson Family Podcast. We've got a great podcast for you. In segment number 2, we're going to be joined by Blake Lovell, who does such a tremendous job over at Southeastern 16. We're going to be diving in on what we've all seen out of the SEC from him. We're also going to throw at him a question as to some of the teams outside the SEC that are standing out to him, but certainly it has been an absolutely incredible conference, what we've seen out there thus far this season. So we're going to take a look at the surprises, both through the positive and the negative out there. And then in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Friday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GN_D1. Keep in mind, Larry CM, name me does not matter. So as per usual, please send these into the timeline. The other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had ourselves a tremendous day of college basketball on Thursday. Let's take a look back at it. Try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
The lone ranked teams that were in action were in the Big Ten, and for the Big Ten ranked teams, it was a very fascinating night as Michigan State just completely romped Washington, this by a count of 88-54, as Michigan State now 10-5 against the spread as far this season. For our good friends Washington, they go 3 of 16 from three-point range, and they were stuck on 1 point for seemingly an eon. They did not get past a 1-point plateau until something like 10 minutes remaining in the first half. Like, it was absolutely deplorable what we saw out there. Tyler Harris did provide them with 14 points, but Michigan State, they've been cold from 3 all season long. Not necessarily hot in this game, 7-21 from 3, but Washington was colder. They go 3 of 16 from the outside, and you had Jaden Akins supply Michigan State with 20 points. For Washington, they lost every facet of this game. The turnover battle, the rebound battle. They had just as many blocks as Michigan State, so that's good, but past that, less than savory performance out there. And how about a less than savory performance for Rutgers, who's now 5-10 against the spread? 68-50. Purdue gets the job done. Purdue only goes 4 of 24 from three-point range, but Dylan Harper, he gave it a go. 28 minutes. He gave the team 6 points and 6 rebounds. Ace Bailey throws in their 17 points, and they didn't have much else outside of that. Heck, for Purdue, they went 8 of 16 at the free throw line, but they won the turnover battle 16-8. This game was an absolute slog, and Purdue did lose a rebound battle by a count of 34-36, but he had Braden Smith go off for 16 points, 14 assists, so Purdue finds a way to get the job done, and Ohio State seemingly had the lead for the entire game against Oregon, and then they relinquish it late, as for Ohio State, just an upchucking in this one, up 6 points with about 3.5 minutes remaining. They lose by a count of 73-71, as for Oregon, they were able to have Jackson Shellset really lead the way in the back half of this game. Oregon overall, they go 9 of 25 from 3. Shellset, he was 4 of 6 from three-point range with 24 points, with Nate Biddle going out for 21 points. He goes 4 of 8 from three-point range, and for Ohio State, they went 7 of 18 from the outside, but for Ohio State, they also played even up with regards to turnover battle. They lose a rebound battle, 35-33, as Bruce Thornton had 20 points in this one, but he had just 6 points off the bench for Ohio State. Meanwhile, Keyshawn Bartholomew by himself for Oregon, he was able to come off the bench for 7 points, so that was a little bit less than tremendous for them. We've had some of our best cover teams in all of college basketball come from some of these smaller conferences, and though St. Bonaventure is right now the best cover team in all of college basketball, UC San Diego has certainly been one that has been able to make you some money. And for UC San Diego, it looked like they were not going to cover on Thursday, but they get the job done 95-68 over Cal Poly. This was a 3-point game, by the way, with about 9 minutes remaining. From there, UC San Diego just absolutely opens this up. They were about a 14.5 to a 15-point favorite. They do get the job done, despite the fact that Cal Poly won 16 out of 41 from three-point range. But what San Diego did was they won the turnover battle 15-11, and they won the rebound battle 38-23, as you had Aniwana Tiat Jones lead the way with 25 points. Liberty has been another one of those teams that has been able to make you money all season long. 76-68. They go on the road. They get the job done against Sam Houston State. They close as about 3.5 to 4-point favorites themselves, and Sam Houston State actually goes 8 of 20 from three-point range, but Liberty, they were 11 of 27 from three. They won the turnover battle 13-10. And they had on their side a guy in Colin Porter who had 17 points, while you also had a double-double, 12 rebounds, 10 points out of Owen Aquino to be able to get the job done out there. Another team has been pretty rock solid against the spread has been Oregon State. And Oregon State, they go on the road, they force overtime against Santa Clara. They don't get it done outright, 82-81, but they do get that covered. They're now 11-4 against the spread, and a rough 4-game against the spread skid. And I actually believe they're now 12-4 against the spread. But that said, for Santa Clara, this has been a team that's been looking relatively impressive recently. They go just 7-24 from three-point range, and they go 13 of 27 at the free throw line. They're going to need to clean that up, but they've been able to get a freshman going in Elijah Mai, who was able to supply the team with 21 points. And then another team has been very much impressing me, South Alabama. They're a team that is now 10-4 against the spread, and if you're looking out there in the Sun Belt, I would say that they're the team to beat right now after they took down Arkansas State by a count of 76-62. For Arkansas State, 12 of 49 from three-point range. Meanwhile, South Alabama, 12 of 24 from three-point range. Just as many made threes, 25 fewer attempts. For South Alabama, they actually do lose the turnover battle in this game 12-5, but they were able to have a nice 22.5 rebound performance. Their big man in Elijah Armiston. They've been looking to these guys coming up from the non-D1 ranks. This is someone that began his life out there in the great state of Minnesota. They have found him, that Midwest pipeline, working very well for South Alabama, and they find a way to be able to get it done. Another team that has been able to get the job done quite a bit this season as well has been Texas State. Texas State has been one of the more intriguing teams myself as a 7 or so point underdog. They do get the job done outright on the money line against Troy by kind of 74-73. And for Troy, this has been a little bit of a wobbly season for them. They are 9-5 against the spread, while Texas State is 8-5 against the spread. But Texas State, very good showing in this one with Tylen Pope, the transfer from Tulane, giving you 27 points, 10 rebounds. So they persevere. They do find a way to be able to get the job done. But team that is not getting the job done right now, Louisiana is 4-11 against the spread. They've been one of your lesser cover teams as Old Dominion goes on the road and they get a 71-60 win. Does feel like Old Dominion is starting to find their way. Louisiana is right now under the tutelage of a interim coach, and they lost the rebound battle 37-27. Other than Mustafa El Montequil, you really don't have a whole lot with regards to this team. So that has been very much less than tremendous. Also in the smaller conferences, we've got some of the, shall we say, worst cover teams in all of college basketball. Now, Minnesota has been your absolute worst at 2-11-2 against the spread, but Grand Canyon not too far behind. Side note, Sam Houston State, who I already talked about with their game against Liberty, they're now 3-10 against the spread themselves. But how about Grand Canyon? 3-12 against the spread, and they lose outright to Utah Valley as a favorite by a count of 72-64. Ty Grant Foster seems to be getting online, which is a good sign for the team. 22 points, 8 boards, 1 of 3 from three-point range. You'll take that, but for this Grand Canyon bunch, they lose a rebound battle by a count of 45-37. They lose a turnover battle 14-12, as you did have 21 big points in this one for Dominic Nelson, so Grand Canyon finds a way to get the job done. Cal State Fullerton, they find a way to not get the job done as well. They're now 4-11 against the spread. They still have no point guard whatsoever, 63-53. They lose to UC Davis, as for UC Davis, they go just 5 of 23 from 3, but for Cal State Fullerton, 1 of 20 from the outside. As a matter of fact, you had a combined 46 made free throws in a game in which you saw 116 total points, as Cal State Fullerton lost a turnover battle 21-15. Like, this was just an absolute game of sadness right here. So that was not tremendous to say the least. And if you made it through that game, well, I do salute you. And I do salute you if you've been bearing with this team, as Bellarmine, they are now 4-11 against the spread. They lose on their own floor to Jacksonville 74-59. They were about 7.5 point underdogs, and For Bellarmine, a less than savory performance. Jack Karzinski, the transfer from William & Mary, is now healthy, so that should help them out a little bit. And Bellarmine did go 9-21 from three-point range. Problem is they lost the turnover battle 14-9, and they lost the rebound battle 39-26. So that was a little bit less than tremendous. Another team who has been really rough against the spread this far this season has been Loyola Chicago, and this was not a game that we did see on yesterday's card, but I do want to go back to a game from Wednesday. They did get the job done 79-68. So looking a little bit better out there. We'll see if that gets them going a tad, but another team has now 4-10 against the spread. That'd be Oral Roberts, and boy, did they not get the job done as North Dakota State 110-96. They're able to take them down as for North Dakota State, they go 15 out of 30 from three-point range, 27 of 31 at the free throw line, and Oral Roberts loses this game despite the fact that they went 15 of 31 from three, 16 of 17 at the free throw line with 9 turnovers, but just didn't guard a soul in this game as North Dakota State had 3 different guys go off for 20-plus points in this one, as you had Mason Miller, Noah Federson, along Jackson Moyne all be able to do so. So that was very dominant in Denver. They've been a lesser team as well, 95-70. North Dakota is able to just completely land-base them. Another team has been pretty rough all season long, the Governators of Austin Peay. And for Austin Peay, they find a way to not get the job done at home against West Georgia. 72-68 final in this one as West Georgia goes 5 of 13 from 3. Austin Peay did go 9 of 25 from 3, but they play even up with regards to turnover battle. They lose a rebound battle by kind of 38-36, and they did not have on their side Sheldon Williams-Dryden, who for West Georgia was able to go off, have 25-plus points in this one. So they do find a way to persevere, and they are able to get the job done. Vermont has also been less than savory against the spread. They are just 5-11 against the spread, but they've been the big bad bully in the America East for a long time. Looks like UMass Lowell may try to come after their title, but for Vermont, they go on the road. They get a win against UMass Lowell, 67-63. This despite the fact that they only go 7-31 from three-point range. UMass Lowell did go 21 of 24 at the free throw line, but they lost the rebound battle 44-30. This for a Vermont team that entered in this night with nobody averaging more than 4.5 rebounds per game, as coming up big in this one, 17 points, 11 rebounds. Eliero Ayu-Fale, hopefully I said that correctly, and for Vermont, they did a nice job winning their turnover battle 10-9 as well, so they do find a way to persevere, and they do get the job done. By the way, out there in the America East, road teams went 3-1 on Thursday. The lone home team that won, Maine, they did not get Maine, 82-71 final in that one. They were able to take down Binghamton, so yay verily there, and yay verily to overs for a few teams out there in college basketball. Obviously, South Dakota has been one of your top over teams in all of college basketball. They were off, they were resting, but Northern Arizona has been another one of those teams that has just printed for you if you've been in on their overs, and they were able to cash another one on Thursday as they lose and cover against Montana, this by a count of 81-76, and this is a game that got pretty harebrained late as you saw 87 points put up in the first half. Game comes down to a crawl in the second half, but then you get some late game fouling and some tomfoolery as for Northern Arizona. They actually win the rebound battle and the turnover battle in this one, but Montana went 9-20 from three-point range to be able to get the job done in that one. So you saw a little bit of craziness. North Dakota State, by the way, now 12 overs and 3 unders in their games thus far this season. And St. Mary's State, 10 overs to 3 unders as well. So they've been a very good over team. Cal Poly, who I mentioned before, they're now up to 12 overs to 4 unders, but another team has been very rock solid for you all season long. Not necessarily with regards to overs or unders, but just in terms of being able to get the job done and being able to get wins. UC Irvine, Zot, the Anteaters, they do get a win over CSUN, 77-67. It really wasn't this close of a game as UC Irvine came out and just completely punked poor CSUN in this one as they got up by a count of 25-5. At one point, CSUN was playing catch-up all game long. Ben Lyken was able to supply 17 points for Irvine. They go 11-25 from 3. CSUN just 2 of 14 from three-point range, but Matt Fofana was able to give the team a double-double, 10 points, 13 rebounds, and for Irvine, the one issue that you do have with the team, they did have in this game 16 turnovers, so a little bit less than savory out there. One of your better teams, the under, has been Lipscomb, as Lipscomb has played just 3 overs to 11 unders thus far this season, and For Lipscomb, they lose at home to Queens as a pretty sizable favorite. They were a 13.5-point favorite, 75-73 the final. The total was north of 150, so you got the under there, as Queens does go 10 of 25 from 3, and Lipscomb was 8 of 21 from the outside. They've actually struggled from 3, but slowed this game down, and for Lipscomb, they just lost a battle on the glass, 41-27, so that was a little bit less than tremendous. UC Davis, who I mentioned before, they're up to now 4 overs to 10 unders as well, so they've been one of your more underwhelming teams in college basketball as well. And then Sacramento State has been a pretty rock-solid team to the under as well. They've got 9 unders to 4 overs, and they played a little bit of an overwhelming game against Idaho, and it's not one that went their way. 80-67, Idaho goes on the road. They find a way to get the job done. This is despite the fact that Jacob Holt, for Sacramento State, he provided the team with 35 points. He did all that he could, threw in their 10 rebounds, but Sacramento State loses a turnover battle 14-8. They actually win the rebound battle 31-28, but again, Idaho was able to go 13 of 34 from three-point range, so a little bit less than savory there. And Idaho, they attempted 14 more field goal attempts than Sacramento State. And if you're looking at some of the other results that we saw in college basketball as well, not necessarily too many notable teams that really play on Thursdays, but that said, UNC Greensboro, they did go on the road. They got the job done against Chattanooga, this by kind of 78-75. As for Greensboro, they got down double figures early on in this game, but they go 11 of 23 from three-point range in this one. For UNC Greensboro, they win the turnover battle by kind of 9-8, and they were able to get 28 points out of Donovan Atwell. Keenan Giles, he was able to throw in their 26 points, so a nice scoring expose there, and one of your better teams over the last few seasons. That has certainly been Samford and Sam Iamford. They play a little bit of a lower scoring game for their standards. They get the win, but no cover against VMI, 81-68, as this is a total of 158.5, falls harmlessly under. VMI's been able to cover some numbers this far this season. They go 8 of 22 from three-point range, and if you're looking at what we're getting in college basketball right now, certainly over the last 7 days, it has been a little bit more underwhelming. Overall for the season, the overs have a very, very slim lead on unders, 1,270 overs to 1,267 unders. Meanwhile, it's been an underdog season, 1282, 1257, and 37 against the spread. But if you look at the last 7 days in college basketball, favorites reigning supreme, hitting at 56%, 187, 143, and 2 against the spread, while the unders hitting at darn near 53%, 173 unders to 154 overs. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Thursday. Now let's take a look at what we're getting out there in the SEC landscape. We bring in our good friend Blake Lovell to do so. Does amazing work over at Southeastern 16. He joins me next right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now the Mercyhurst Family Podcast. We're back here, love you, Las Vegas, for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VC Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man, as we've got Blake Lovell aboard. He does such great work over at Southeastern 16. Taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. He has been covering the SEC for a very long time. He knows this conference all so well, and it has been so much fun what we have been seeing this season, as he does a great job being able to gauge all of these teams. You're able to follow him on Twitter /X at the Blake Lovell. Last name is spelled Lovell. He also does a great job with the Clutch Point Sports app /website, and always great to have you aboard, Blake. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks as always for having me, Greg.
Thank you for joining me, Blake. And Blake, we've now got a few SEC games in our lives. Most of these teams have played about 2 to 3 games. And have there been any real clear takeaways from what we've seen from SEC play thus far? Because I think that it's been so intriguing what we've been seeing in terms of these games. And this is something that I've been noting with regards to the games involving ranked teams going the way of the favorite and them being able to get the job done thus far.
Yeah, I think, when we were talking about it in the non-conference, sure, like the SEC had great metrics, historic metrics. It was certainly a start we've just not seen before for a conference in a single season. But we knew that teams were going to have to start playing each other. And once that happened, that means teams are going to start losing games. Even though, projections may have said, hey, there's 13 or 14 SEC teams that would get in mid-December. Well, eventually, again, teams have to lose games. And I think we're starting to see some of that separation between the teams that are legitimate, NCAA tournament teams, and maybe some of these teams that are going to wind up either just on the outside looking in or perhaps way on the outside looking in. And so I think that's what stood out so far. It is a long conference season and you don't want to overreact to a couple games. But at the same time, these were some of the thoughts we already had on a few of these teams, one way or the other, whether it's the teams that were just like, hey, they're going to be really good. They're going to win a lot of SEC games, even in a tough conference, or, it's going to be the teams that they may have a bit of a difficult road to try to find themselves in that NCAA tournament picture, even heading into February. And so I think that's certainly what stood out so far, just in some of the matchups we've seen between these teams.
Yep, it certainly has stood out, and I feel like the most intriguing team, and I'm not calling them the best team, but the most intriguing team thus far has been Florida, because they play that slobber knocker against Kentucky where both teams get past 100 points, and then a few nights ago against Tennessee. Tennessee doesn't get to 55 points against them. What do you make out of Florida, and should they be entering the chat as one of the top teams in all of college basketball?
I'm in on Florida. I know people picked on the sort of non-conference schedule, and they just didn't have, the signature wins that we look like for a team like Auburn and even teams like Texas A&M and Alabama. Florida didn't have a lot of those. And I think people were just waiting to see, okay, what does that look like once you start SEC play? Well, they start SEC play by giving up 106 points on the road. They score 100 and they lose. That probably wasn't the start that people wanted to see. And I do think that's where, as always, we overreact anytime we see that first conference game. I just thought in that one, to be honest with you, Greg, people said it was just a bunch of bad defense. I thought it was just two great offenses. And yes, there were some bad defensive possessions, but great offenses sometimes will do that to you. And then they turn around and, again, hold Tennessee to 43 points and look pretty good doing it on the defensive end. So a complete 180 there with that. So I think that Florida has all the pieces. When I look at this team statistically, I'm trying to find the weakness, and I just don't see it right now with them. Yes, again, they have to be maybe a little bit more consistent defensively, but I just thought they had a lot more to do with Kentucky on the offensive side. And then they come out and hold, again, Tennessee to whatever at one point Tennessee was 7 of 49 from the floor, whatever it wound up being at the end. But I just think they've got great guard play. They've got really good front court play, and they've got depth in the front court, which is what you need. They have stars. And I think whether it's Walter Clayton or Elijah Martin, those guys can sort of take over a game at any time. Maybe an Alex Condon is starting to be one of those guys too in the front court. So, yeah, to me, Florida feels like the total package here. They got a tricky game on Saturday at Arkansas, a team that's pretty desperate right now. But I think Florida belongs right up there where they are right now in terms of being one of the legitimate SEC title contenders.
Yep, absolutely. It's been a great year for Florida, and I think that it's going to continue to be great for them moving forward. It's Blake Lovell, who does such great work over at Southeastern 16, joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, and no question about it, we're going to be seeing some great games that are going to be going down on Saturday, and I think that there's a clear separation between the haves and the have-nots, and I think that it's going to be interesting to see how Tennessee tries to bounce back from that loss against Florida, because they're still ranked number one. They're going to be going on the road against Texas, and Texas did not win that game against Auburn, and as a matter of fact, it looked like it was going to be a blowout, and then Texas had a really nice surge in the second half. What do you make out of these two teams? Two teams that they could use a win here, with Texas starting off 0-2 in SEC play, but like what I saw in the back half of that game against Texas, but they've been a little bit inconsistent, and we saw with Tennessee what has really ailed them over the last few years. Saints last year with Dalton Connect, those scoring droughts against Florida were very apparent.
Yeah, we just haven't seen a lot of those, like you said. I mean, going back to last year, once Dalton Connect got in his groove, you weren't going to see many of those for Tennessee, and we thought it was the same with Chaz Lanier this year. But, he came out, and give Florida some credit. They played the kind of defense that made it tough on them, but, he also just missed some open shots. So sometimes guys are going to do that on the road, no matter how good of a shooter that you are. And so, yes, that is one that kind of makes you rethink a few things, at least, when it comes to Tennessee, and wonder, offensively, when they go on the road against some of these teams, are they going to be able to put it all together? And that's where I think just the fact that they're a good rebounding team, they're physical in the front court with Okpara and Milicic, that'll help them, I think, in some of those, instances. And obviously their guards are physical, with Ziegler and Meshack leading the way, on the perimeter defensively. But that's the thing, is maybe they are going to be one of those teams that sometimes when you just go on the road and you get the perfect storm of playing a team like Florida, who was kind of desperate at that point, it may look like that. But the thing is, I don't think it's always going to look like that for Tennessee. I think their defense, as always, is going to give them a chance to beat anybody in the country. And there may be some games where that's a little bit, uglier than not, but we'll see how they bounce back here, because you said it, Greg, for Texas, they're 0-2. And Texas, if they don't win this game, they are very likely looking at the idea that they're going to be 0-5 in SEC play, because after that, next week, they go to Oklahoma and then they go to Florida. And I just think those are two games where they're going to be the underdog in both of those. And so if you can't find a way to, as we say in this league, hold serve at home, you're going to be in trouble. And if they give up a second straight home loss, even if it is two, right, the two best teams in the league, maybe in some people's opinion, in Auburn and Tennessee, then that's still a problem because you've got to find wins somewhere. And the thing about Texas is, where are those quality wins right now? They didn't play a great non-conference schedule to this point. Maybe their best wins either NC State or St. Joe's, and that just comes nowhere close to what a lot of other teams have banked in the SEC right now. So this is a crucial game for Rodney Terry's team, and I think, again, they have to find a way to win this one. Obviously, for Tennessee looking up maybe being 1-2, that's not great either, but I think Tennessee has the means of maybe making it up a little bit throughout their schedule. I don't know about Texas. Like, this schedule right off the bat, it's brutal. Maybe that strong finish against Auburn will help them a little bit here because, boy, they really, really need to win this one.
Yeah, they really do. And that is going to be such a fascinating game to look at, to say the least. And it's a rubber meets the road game, in my opinion, for both of those teams. So they're going to be ones of intrigue, to say the least. And another team that really stands out to me that I just feel like we're not talking about them enough, it's Mississippi State. Mississippi State, they go out there, they get the job done on the road. Not easy to do in the SEC a few days ago against Vanderbilt. Now we're going to be seeing them over the weekend against Kentucky in a hosting role. And Mississippi State has only lost one game, albeit Butler has not necessarily been the world's greatest team. And yeah, you could say what you will about them playing a softer non-conference schedule, but I mean, they've got a win over Pittsburgh. They knocked off SMU on the road. They took down Utah. They took down Memphis on the road as well. They just seem to be doing it time and time again. And they're sort of what I feel like Florida was a few weeks ago, a team that just continues to get wins, but we continue to just find a way to try to, shall we say, push them down the pecking order a little bit more. And I'm not quite sure why.
No, I think Mississippi State is now in that discussion when we talk about SEC title contenders. That may be an exaggeration to some people, but I don't see why it would be because you look at their resume to this point, and it is tremendous. They're 4-0, I think, in quad one games right now. They've taken advantage of all their opportunities. You know, sometimes they're just coming out and just blowing teams out, right? Go back to the Pitt game. They won that one by 33, and that came off their loss to Butler. You know, look what they did to South Carolina. I know South Carolina's a little down the pecking order in the SEC, but they beat them by 35 at home. They go win by double digits at what I think is a pretty good Vanderbilt team. You know, they won at Memphis by double digits. Mississippi State, an 8-game winning streak right now. They've turned it on both sides of the floor. Their offense is so fun to watch this season because it's a little different, right? They're not playing through Tolu Smith like they had the previous couple of seasons. They're playing through their guards with Josh Hubbard and all these guys, Cam Matthews and Josh Hubbard, two of the top probably 6 or 7 players in the SEC. And they're going to, probably should get some national love at their position. And so that's how good they've been. This is the best start for Mississippi State since they started. I don't remember what the record was, but they were 14-1 back in 2003-04. They're doing something there that hasn't been done in 2 decades. And I think it's just, again, kind of sticking to what they're good at. Chris Jans has always done a good job of that. He doesn't just necessarily have to hold himself to a certain style. He will play to the strengths of his roster. And he's doing that this season. And, man, they get a big game coming up on Saturday against Kentucky. Then they go to Auburn after that, host Ole Miss after that, and then go to Tennessee. So you talk about, look how many more quad one win opportunities they have here. Even if they split those 4 games, Greg, let's say they win the home games, lose the road games, they're still sitting in a great position, I think, as a number 2 or even maybe a high number 3 seed in the NCAA tournament as it stands, in late January potentially. So that's where they are, and I'm with you. I think they're the team that people just aren't talking about enough. And they got a chance to really prove it on Saturday because I looked up this number earlier, Greg, and we were talking about this game. I think Kentucky has won 17 or 18 straight regular season games against Mississippi State. This is quite a chance to snap that streak and add yet another big win for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, that would be an absolutely massive win, and that is going to be a fun one to look at, to say the least, as Blake Lovell does such great work over at Southeastern 16. He is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, and we've got ourselves a lot of fun ones that are going to be going down in the SEC, both on Saturday and moving forward. And is there a team or two that we have yet to mention that you've really been having your eye on a little bit? And is there a team that maybe you feel like should be either getting more buzz or less buzz than what they're getting? Because I think that Auburn very much worth the buzz right now. They have been able to get the job done time and time again, albeit things got a little bit hairy in that game against Texas, but they were able to get a nice, good win there. I feel like we need to be talking a little bit more about Mississippi State, but is there a team or two in the conference that you feel like is a little bit out of sight, out of mind, or we should be maybe hitting the panic button on them just a little bit right now?
Yeah, if we quickly start with the negative, I think Arkansas fans are starting to hit the panic button a little bit because they've not been pleased with this 0-2 start here. And again, one of those was at home, losing a game against Ole Miss where many people think, hey, that's a great chance to bounce back after a rough performance in Tennessee, and Arkansas just didn't do it. And now what do you have to do? You have to host Florida. I've tried to break this game down every way I can, Greg, and I just do not see an advantage for Arkansas in most statistical, categories in this game. And so it's a tough spot to potentially be looking at 0-3, and then you have back-to-back road games next week. So if Arkansas loses on Saturday at home to Florida, I think, panic button is probably set in John Calipari's first season there. But in terms of the teams that maybe I'm curious about here as we move forward, I think there are three. And I just mentioned Ole Miss. I think they're one of them because I told people earlier in the week, I said, I don't think that we're giving maybe Ole Miss enough credit either because their overall body of work is really not bad at all. They have played one bad game this season, and that was at Memphis where they lost that one by 17 right after Christmas. But, look at their other loss, right? They lose to Purdue at the buzzer the day after Thanksgiving. And so everything else was a win. And they've had some pretty good performances. And I think, Greg, we're starting to see that Chris Beard type defense that we were so used to there for a while. And now that they're doing that, they're getting good guard play. They're taking care of the ball. Sean Padula has been fantastic. And I think when you just look at the overall body of work for Ole Miss, they're in a pretty good spot. And they host LSU on Saturday. She'll win that game, and then they've got big opportunities after that, back-to-back road games at Alabama, Mississippi State. And then I think two teams that, we've already kind of seen win big games this season at home. Georgia did it on Tuesday against Kentucky. Now they get another chance to prove themselves in Athens against Oklahoma, who's probably reeling a little bit after, losing that game to Texas A&M. But then after that, it's right, 3 of the next 4 games for Georgia, at Tennessee, home against Auburn, at Florida. So there's a chance to where can we put Georgia in that category where they're starting to move up? What if they go on the road and steal one of those type games? That could be big. And they host Auburn, in that stretch. So I think Georgia's a team building a little momentum now. And then the other one is Missouri, because I think Missouri is a team that, again, we've seen them beat Kansas at home this season. They struggled at Auburn. Everybody struggled at Auburn. But really, when you look at it, in terms of like a whole game, Missouri was, up double digits on Memphis to start the season in the season opener, wound up losing that game by 8 on the road. No shame in that. They lose the game to Illinois, who has just, become a juggernaut, it seems, these days with the way they're playing. They lose that game by 3. And then it's like, hey, they have a nice performance against LSU, but they've got a very interesting game against Vanderbilt on Saturday. I think that's one. If you want to sort of have that confidence in Missouri moving forward, they need to win that kind of game. And I think that's going to be one that's very interesting. I think this is a very talented roster, certainly more talented than the roster they had last year. They finally snapped the losing streak in SEC play with the win over LSU. But I think teams like Georgia and Missouri here got some big opportunities ahead, and let's see if they can capitalize on them.
I'm right there with you on Georgia. I've been loving what I've been seeing out that defensive effort from them. They've been executing time and time again on that side of the floor, and I do think that they're going to be able to continue to do so moving forward. And I think that we've got a lot of fun to be had out there in the SEC, Blake. But I do want to ask you about this as well, because you do a great job on the SEC front, but I know that you cover all things college basketball. Who's a team or two outside the SEC that you have your eye on that you've been really impressed by recently? Because outside the conference, we've seen a few teams be able to rise up as well, and it's been really interesting to see what we've gotten in terms of like the Big 10, Big 12, as there's been a lot of good conference play that has been had over the last few weeks.
Yeah, it is, no doubt, Greg. I mean, and I feel like we always kind of turn the conversation back to this conference in some way, shape, or form every single year. But I always have my eye on the Mountain West because yes. I just think it's always fascinating to see how this thing plays out, right? And I mean, you look at a team like Utah State, got off to such a great start, and now, look at what Jared Calhoun has done. They're off to this 5-0 start in league play, and I just think, they're another one of those teams that you're just looking at, and you're starting to build that profile on teams that can have success in the NCAA tournament, and certainly they're one of them you circle. Of course, they've got a big game coming up on Saturday against Boise State. Another team that when you just kind of look at that Mountain West pecking order, you've got them up there with New Mexico and San Diego State, of course, and all that. But yeah, I'm curious because as we can tell, Greg, there's a clear divide too in this conference. Like you kind of know who the bottom tier teams are going to be, the ones that have kind of started over there. But I really love sort of the battle we could get at the top in this conference right now. And I think too, it always speaks to the coaches. We've talked about sort of the coaches that have come into that conference, whether it's, looking at Richard Pitino at New Mexico, Jared Calhoun taking over at Utah State, which seemingly just always finds the right guy to be able to win games. And then you just kind of have the stalwarts that have been there, like a Brian Dutcher, at San Diego State, and of course, what Leon Rice continues to do at Boise State. So I'm really excited just having seen some of these games, so far this season. I feel like it's just rinse and repeat when it comes to seeing how this race pans out. And then we know what the discussion will be when they get to the NCAA tournament is, can they kind of have that long-term success? Can you get multiple teams that are advancing, to the second weekend or beyond potentially That's what I'm always curious about. But I love the level of basketball that's being played right now between some of those top teams. I'm excited sort of to see who winds up being the team left standing there at the top, because there's certainly quite a few options based on what they're kind of doing so far.
Yep, the Mountain West, always a lot of fun to be able to gauge. You never know what you're going to be able to get in that conference, but you know that's going to be exciting, and typically it's going to be a little bit better in January than it is in March, but a man that does a great job in January, March, April, it doesn't matter the month. This guy's firing all cylinders. That'd be you, Blake. Let the good people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, always appreciate it, Greg. Yeah, you can check out our SEC stuff, Southeastern 16 on YouTube, doing daily live shows, sometimes multiple times a day, covering this wild conference this year in the SEC. So, yeah, you can find all of our SEC stuff there, Southeastern 16 on YouTube. And you can follow me on Twitter for everything else at the Blake Lovell.
And Blake does such an incredible job taking a look at this great game of college basketball. And every single time he joins me, lends such great insight. So big thanks to Blake for joining me on He's now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board with this College Basketball Friday as we have some big shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by our good friend Blake Lovell, who does such great work over at Southeastern 16, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins me, lends such great insights. Did so once again today, so big thanks to Blake for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Friday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GDET_D1. Going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the games with 3 digits on the rotation first, and then the extra games are going to be the Northeast Conference games. So it'll be very nice and easy. Pretty much time order with everything except for the not Northeast Conference games, and then Northeast Conference games, they are going to be at the bottom, so that should keep things all nice, neat, clean, and easy. And we start out with 877, 878 on the betting board, a game that I'll be writing up as Merrimack, the old Merrymen, are on the road against Sacred Heart. And Sacred Heart is a underdog at home of 1 to 1.5 points. So tonight's game is 142 to 142.5. I did set Sacred Heart as a 1-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to go with them outright on the money line, but what I'm writing up here is the under. You've got a Merrimack team that is right now outside the top 350 in terms of total possessions per game, one of the slowest teams in all of college basketball. Now, Sacred Heart has had a rough time of being able to guard the three-point line. They're outside the top 275 with that regard, and Merrimack is a better three-point shooting team than they've been in past years, with Devin Savage being able to give you 10 points, shooting 38% from three-point, but it's not like they're an amazing three-point shooting team. They shoot about 33.5% as a collective. Now, Merrimack does a good job of being able to keep things under control with regards to their ball security. They only turn the ball over 10 times per contest, and Aaron Clark, I would say, is the best player in this game. 5 boards, 20 points per contest. Sean Trumper also throws in there right around about 5.5 or so rebounds per game, and strangely, Sacred Heart is able to shoot about 40% from three-point range on the road. This falls to about 32.7% when they're at home, but I do think that they're going to do a nice job down low with Brandon Johnson supplying the team with 6 boards, 9 points per game. It's also massive that they've got back Tanner Thomas, who was missing for quite a bit of the early part of the season. He has come back and give this team 15 plus points in now 3 out of the 4 games that he has returned in. He's coming off of an 11 rebound performance as well. Right now shooting north of 50% from three-point range. That should be taking a little bit of a drop off, but you've had Anquan Hill, who's been a little bit banged up. He's been able to give the team 12 points per contest, and as a matter of fact, you look at each of the top 6 scorers in terms of points per game for Sacred Heart. All of them have missed at least one game, and they've got most of these guys back for this one. Aiden Carpenter still dealing with a little bit of an injury. He was averaging about 9 points, 2.5 assists per contest. That has led to Makai Connor, who's right now giving up 5 assists per contest, being the main facilitator. He's been able to do a good job in that role. 6 plus assists in 4 of the last 5 games, albeit 4 plus turnovers in 3 of the last 4. And Merrimack's still a top 80 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but this is a Sacred Heart team that now is finding their guys just in general. I do think that they're going to do a nice job down low against a Merrimack team that they never really generate second and third chances. Merrimack 359th with regards to rebound percentage. I think that that'll allow Sacred Heart to be able to get the job done at home. Writing up the under in the spot, so by total 135. 135, and I do like Sacred right on the money line. 879, 880 on the betting board. Buffalo is going to be playing us to Kent State. Another game that'll right up Kent State, a 9.5 to a 10-point favorite, and total on this game is between 142 to 142.5, and I am writing up Kent State. I set them as a 13.5-point favorite. Kent State, a top 30 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, you have a Buffalo unit that is outside the top 280 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. Ryan Sable has been great in the backcourt. He's shooting 43% from 3, 16.5 points per contest. He's really the lone guy on the roster that shoots about 32% from 3 as a whole. Buffalo is shooting about 30.5% from 3-point range. Buffalo has been turning the ball over about 15 times per game, as well as Ty Dunn. He's able to give you 13 points. He throws in there 5.5 assists, 5 rebounds, but also turns the ball over 4.6 times per contest. Anquan Bolden Jr. was expecting a little bit more out of him in his sophomore season. Right now shooting 16% from 3-point range, albeit he's given the team double figures in 2 out of the last 3 games, so starting to pick it up a little bit there, but it's been an issue. And other than what you've been able to get out of Noah Batchelor, is able to give you 5.5 rebounds per game. Not done down low. Meanwhile, Von Cameron Davis for Kent State, he's supplying the team with 16.5 points, shooting in the low 30s from 3-point range, and that's something that is an issue for Kent State. They shoot 28.5% from 3. That's outside the top 325 nationally, but still Ron Hornbeek should be able to control things down low. He's able to give the team 7 rebounds per game. They dealt with the injury to Morgan Stafford. He has been out of the lineup for about a month or so and shouldn't be returning for this one, but you still have Ceylon Medley, who's been able to do a really good job of being able to give this team facilitation. Not a lot of scoring with only about 5 points per game, but 3.5 assists. When he steps to the free throw line, he hits it at about an 80% clip. This Kent State team, not going to wow you with their offense, but I do think that they just completely hold down a Buffalo team that's been erratic with the ball, to say the least, and this is a Buffalo team that comes to having allowed at least 88 points in each of their last 4 games. So, good old situation of something's got to give, as this Kent State defense has been oh so rock solid, albeit they did have that scare against Division III Heidelberg, but that said, I do think that these guys go out there, get the job done, and take it out on a Buffalo team that's had a tough time getting good, clean offense all season long. Kent State gave up 50 points in their last game against Northern Illinois. Good sign there. So I'm going to be willing to lay with Kent State and write that up, and I'm in on the under semi-total at a 135.5. 881, 882 on the card. It is Niagara. They play us to St. Peter's. The Peacocks are a 1 to 1.5 point favorite, and your total between 127.5 to a 128. St. Peter's is the number 1 team in all of college basketball in terms of fouls committed on a per possession basis, but I'm willing to roll with them. I did set them as a 2.5 point favorite. While St. Peter's fouls a lot, Niagara is a team that just really doesn't get to the free throw line a lot in terms of free throws on a per possession basis. They're outside the top 250. So even though this team shoots 76% of the charity stripe, out of their top 7 scorers, all but one of them shoot at least 77.8% at the free throw line. That's a little bit of an issue. Now, you do have a nice go-to scorer in Jahari Williamson, who comes on over from Valparaiso, shooting 43% for 3, 11 points per contest. I've been loving what I've been seeing there, but Niagara just doesn't have a ton down low. Jalen Martinez, who comes on over from the Big West, has been able to give you 5.5 rebounds per game, and Olamide Aldu Dawn, hopefully I said that correctly, 5.5 boards, 7.5 points per contest. He's been pretty rock solid as well, but Niagara last year was a really good 3-point shooting team. This year they're meh, shooting about 34.5% from 3. Justice Smith has been able to give you about 9.5 points. He shoots it at about a 41% clip from 3-point range, and this is the St. Peter's team that's actually shot it really well from 3-point range, albeit it's the St. Peter's team that turns the ball over way too much, 13.5 turnovers per game, but they're shooting 36.5% from the outside. Each of your top 6 scorers that have made at least 1 3 this year are shooting at least 35.5% from 3-point range. Good news for this St. Peter's team as well as that Niagara has not been good on the glass as far this season. In terms of their rebound percentage, Niagara 263rd in all of college basketball, so that should be able to help them out there. And when it comes to Niagara, they do a relatively solid job of being able to shoot it from 3, but over the last few seasons, they've also been a team that has shot it better from 3-point range on the road rather than at home. It's not quite as extreme this year. As a matter of fact, we've seen that tilt a little bit more to their home 3-point shooting, as right now they're shooting about 38.9% from 3-point range at home. On the road, this dips down to about 32.5%, but Niagara, well, they do a nice job of being able to prioritize their 3-point shooting. They also give it up from 3-point range as well. Niagara's right now allowing opponents to shoot in that pocket of about 38% from three-point range, both at home and on the road. That should allow St. Peter's to have some nice open looks from three-point range with Mason Randolph, give you about 14.5 points per contest. You've also been able to get a lot of production and a lot of versatility out of Mr. Ziegler, as Armani Ziegler gives you about 2 assists, 6 boards, 11.5 points, shoots 35.5% from three, a little bit over seal and a half per contest as well. In St. Peter's, while they do turn the ball over quite a bit, top 125 team in terms of generating turnovers as well for the St. Peter's unit. It's been a team that has been really lacking with regards to their offense recently, 67 points or fewer for their last 5 games, once again outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game, and it's a Niagara team that's leaving a bit of something to be desired offensively as well. Last time they broke through the 70-point barrier, you have to go all the way back to November, so that has been an issue for this Niagara team, to say the least. I do think that you get a little bit more of a slog of a game. I do think that it's going to be slowed down, but I think that you get just enough three-point shooting in this game to be able to approach this total. I set my total at 128.5, so I'm in on the over, and with St. Peter's, I'm willing to lay up to a deuce with them. 883, 884 on the betting board. Another game that'll write up. Mount St. Mary's on the road against Manhattan. Manhattan, a 1.5 point favorite. Your total on this game between 151.5 to a 152, and I made Manhattan a 4.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it, but I'm actually writing up the under. Now, Manhattan has been your top team to the over in all of college basketball. I believe that all but one of their games this far this season have went over the total, but I think that this is a prime spot for an under, because with Mount St. Mary's, they're outside the top 335 in terms of ball security, 338th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Right now, they're dealing with injuries along their backcourt. Dallas Hobbs has yet to play here in the calendar year of 2025. They do still have some really nice rebounding. Dola Adbayo, Jory Cordelia, along Terrell Art. All three of these guys have been able to give you at least 6.5 rebounds per game. This trio has been able to combine for about 32 points per contest, and Cordelia is actually shooting 40% from three-point range, but 15.5 turnovers per game, less than Savory. Xavier Lipscomb, who is a career about 40% three-point shooter, that's down to about 33% this year, because he's had to do a lot of facilitation with the injury to Hobbs. 7 points, 4 assists per contest, and then for this Manhattan team, they should be able to do a relatively solid job holding up down low. I don't know if they win that battle, but Will Snyder has been able to give you a lot of versatility. 6.5 boards, 15.5 points per game, shoots 40% from three-point range. It's a Manhattan team that is in the top 175 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. You're getting really good versatility and overall facilitation of Jaden Winston, about 5 assists, 2 steals, 7 points per contest. Not shooting it well from 3 at about 30% from the outside, but to have a pair of guys that have been able to shoot north of 43% from three-point range, and Wesley Robinson along with Devin Dinkins. Both of these guys have been able to give you between 11 to 11.5 points per game. It's not a Manhattan team that goes overly deep with regards to rotation, so they need to prioritize not fouling, and they've been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to stay out there on the floor, but they do a nice job of being able to execute their offense. Manhattan not getting overly out of control with regards to their tempo either. They've just been able to execute good, clean offense in terms of total possessions per game. Really, neither of these teams out of control. Mount St. Mary's about 103rd in all of college basketball. You got a Manhattan team that's clocking it at 102nd, so I mean pretty much the same there. I do think that the dead possessions of Mount St. Mary's dealing with their guard issues is a big giant issue, and this has been a Mount St. Mary's defense that's actually held up at the point of attack. In regulation, only 72 points or fewer allowed in each of their last 4 games. Meanwhile, for Manhattan, a big reason why we've been seeing so many overs, they have played 3 different overtime sessions in their last 3 games, so the Siena game going to double overtime. So I do think that that's warping things just a little bit. I do think that you've got good value here on the under, so writing up the under as I did set my total 144.5, and with Manhattan, want to lay up to 4 with them. 885, 886 on the big board. Another game that'll right up. Fairfield is going to be playing with Iona. Iona does find themselves as a favorite of a point in a lot of spots, / as a pick'em. Total on this game, it is between 144.5 to a 145, and did set my total 140.5 in on the under, but I'm writing up Fairfield. I set them as a 2.5 point favorite. I do like them outright on the money line. One redeeming quality for the Iona team has been their rebounding. They're 58th in the country in terms of their overall rebound percentage, but they do allow you to get a lot of second chances. On the road, they're allowing opponents to grab more than 31% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound, and out of 364 Division I teams, they are 360th in the country in terms of turnovers per possession, with 16.7 turnovers per game. Adam Nanji is a freshman that's had to run the point. He's giving you 3 assists, but he's also turned the ball over 3 times per contest. Iona shooting 29.9% from three-point range. That's right around about 300th in all of college basketball. DeJure Reeves is a nice go-to scorer. He gives you 2.5 steals, 16 points per contest, and for what Iona does horribly with regards to protecting the ball, they do a nice job of being able to generate with regards to turnovers, but Fairfield is a top 50 team in the country in terms of protecting the ball, albeit they don't necessarily get great offense out of it. They themselves shoot about 31% from three-point range, and Prophet Johnson is the lone guy that gives you north of 4.5 rebounds and north of 9 points per game, 12 points, 7.5 boards. He's been able to throw in there about 2.5 assists per contest as well, so like what I'm seeing there, but We've been able to get about 40% three-point shooting out of Jamie Burgeons, who's been able to do a nice job there. It's a Iona team that has been giving it up quite a bit from three-point range as well. This is an Iona unit that allowing opponents to shoot well north of 33% from three-point range. That's a little bit of an issue, so I do think that Fairfield going to be able to get some open looks in this one. It's an Iona team that has been able to get their offense going a little bit more recently. They've been able to get past the 70-point barrier in 3 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, it is a Fairfield team that's right now riding a dismal 5-game losing streak, so I understand why a lot of people would want to be off the bandwagon here, as pretty much all but one of those losses have been by 7+ points. But that said, I do think that for Fairfield, they do a nice job of being able to protect the ball in this game against Iona. I think that they win the turnover battle. That allows them to be able to win this battle overall. So I do like Fairfield outright on the money line. I do think that for Fairfield, they're going to calm this game down. I think they use just too many turnovers to be able to get an over. So my total 140.5 in on the under, and I'm in on Fairfield outright on the money line, as I'm going to be writing that one up. 887, 888 on the betting board. Ryder is on the road against Canisius. Canisius is an underdog of 3.5 to 4 points. So on this game, you're going to be getting it between 137.5 to 139, and semi-total 137.5. So at the 138 plus, I'm in on the under. With Ryder, I set them as a 3.5 point favorite. When we get down to a 3, that's my buy point here on Ryder, and between a 3 to a 4, I would rather lay a 3 than take a 4. This Ryder team has burnt me quite a bit this year. They have not been good, to say the least, but this is also a Canisius team that is a complete and utter offer, and for Canisius, they've lost all but 1 out of their last 5 games by 12+ points. This is very much less than savory. They might actually have the best scorer out there on the floor as well. Paul McMillan has been able to give you 19 points, 2.5 assists per contest. Team shoots 34% from 3, and if you can get to the free throw line, if you're this team, they've actually shot right around about 81.5% the free throw line. That's a top 10 mark in all of college basketball, but this is a Ryder team that I think is going to be able to control things down low, as you've got Ingram squared, as Tariq Ingram is your main rebounder, 6.5 boards, 9.5 points per contest, but then you've got Ifai West Ingram, who's been able to give you 4.5 points, 3.5 rebounds per game, and this has been a Ryder team that has been able to do an okay job with regards to their discipline. They don't foul a ton in terms of fouls committed on a per possession basis. They're in the top 75 in all of college basketball. They've just been a dismal shooting team. 328th in the country at 2-point shooting percentage. They're 28.7% 3-point shooting. That's in the bottom 25 in all of college basketball as well. They don't necessarily generate a lot of turnovers either, while they themselves have worked on it a little bit, but they're still turning the ball over about 12.5 times per contest. Canisius doesn't generate any turnovers at all, though, and it's a Canisius team that they shoot it a little bit better from the floor. You've got Tana Copa, who's been able to give you a double-figure amount of points per contest, which has been rock solid, but still 337th in the country in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage. This team is actually last in the country in terms of being able to generate fouls, to be able to get to the free throw line as well. You just have a lot of issues here for this Canisius team, and really not a lot down low to be able to deal with Ingram squared, as right now you've got one guy on the roster giving you north of 4 rebounds per game, Cam Polisi, who's been able to give you about 5 boards per contest. So did set my line at 3.5, one to lay up to 3 with Ryder, and did set my total 137.5, so at a 138 plus in on the under as well. 889, 890 on the betting board. Wisconsin is going to be playing us in Minnesota State with the smallest drinks in the union. Minnesota is a underdog of 13 to 13.5 points out on this game, between 140.5 to a 141.5. I'm in on the under with Minnesota. This has been a team that's been well outside the top 320 in terms of total possessions per game, and we're just noticing it in Big Ten play. It feels like all these teams are starting to slow down just a little bit more, and I do think that we're going to be seeing that a little bit more with regards to this Wisconsin team as well. As for Wisconsin, they've played much more up-tempo than what you're used to seeing out of them, but I do think that with this Wisconsin unit, they're going to be able to get things reeled in just a little bit more. Wisconsin has been one of the more, shall we say, poor teams defensively out there in the Big Ten, and for Wisconsin, even though they've been a little bit more poor defensively, they still have been able to do a little bit of a better job than I expected on the glass as far this season. As for Wisconsin, their overall rebound percentage is in the top 100 nationally, and for Minnesota, it's been the Dawson Garcia show for them the entirety of the season. 19 plus points, 7 plus rebounds. He's done a nice job there. And getting back Mike Mitchell, who's able to give you double figures, he's able to do 4 plus assists per contest, has led to Minnesota both playing a little bit more up-tempo and additionally being able to be just a little bit more lethal on offense as well. But that said, this has still been a Minnesota unit that has been lacking a lot in the backcourt, and on the road, their rebound percentage is well outside the top 250 in all of college basketball. So I did set Wisconsin as a favorite of 15 points. Going to be willing to lay it. You've got John Tonje, who's been able to give you 18.5 points per game, and Wisconsin hasn't necessarily been the world's greatest three-point shooting team. 35% is solid, but it's not like it's like some sort of a flamethrower or anything like that. Your main guy from three-point range, by the way, has actually been Kamari McGee. He's shooting 55% from three-point range, but John Blackwell throws in there 2.5 assists, 5 boards, 15.5 points per game. Noah Winter has been your main man down the low with 6 rebounds per game, and Stephen Krull has just done a little bit of this and that. 9.5 points, 5.5 boards, throws in there a few assists. He's able to pop it from 3 at 7 feet tall, but he only shoots about 30% from 3. But team is 85.5% the free throw line. That is pretty much number one in all of college basketball. Only turn the ball over about 10.5 times per game. Minnesota does not force a lot of turnovers, while they themselves only turn the ball over about 10 times per game. Neither of these teams are going to go out there, seek a lot of turnovers. Lucio Patterson, 4 assists at 10.5 points per game, but it is a Minnesota team that they shoot just 31.5% from three-point range. The Wisconsin perimeter defense, really over the last few years, has not necessarily been the world's greatest, but we know this with Minnesota as well. They are just not the same team when they're away from the barn as well. Typically with Minnesota, their both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis gets worse by about 15 points per 100 possessions when they leave home, but they've actually been a halfway decent team on the road with regards to their defense. 107th in the country overall in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but if you look at them in a road/neutral court setting, have been in the top 75 with that regard, so I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a slower, more controlled game. Did set my total 137 in on the under. Do think that Wisconsin gets the job done by double figures, set them as a 15-point favorite. So, going to be willing to lay the number, and I'm going to be willing to take a shot on this total under as well. 891, 892 on the betting board. It is Siena. They're on the road against Quinnipiac. Quinnipiac is a 4 to 4.5 point favorite total on this game. It is 141, and with regards to Quinnipiac, I did set them as a 3.5 point favorite. At 4+, I'm going to be willing to take these points with Siena. Siena's been one of those teams I just keep coming back to. They burned me a few times this season, but it has been a Siena team that has been able to ascend with regards to their offense, getting at least 70 points in each of their last 4 games. Lone exception was their game against St. Bonaventure of the Bonnies 5 games ago, so they've been able to get cooking there, and this has been a Quinnipiac defense that has actually been surprisingly good, giving up 70 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games, so I do think that the offensive, shall we say, prowess is going to be cranking upward because they were dealing with an injury to Savion Lewis throughout the middle part of the season. He missed a few games and was playing at much less than 100%, but looks like he's rounding back into form. He's been able to give the team a combined 13 assists to 5 turnovers in the last 3 games. Now, albeit he only had 8 points in those games as well, but has been able to dole out some good, clean offense after last year. He was one of the leaders in assists in all of college basketball, but you've also got a pair of guys in Paulo Tuño along with Amari Moore who are able to give you more down low. Combined 15.5 rebounds per game. Between these two guys, you've been able to get about 27 points per game, and Otunyo shoots 37.5% from 3, and I do think we're going to see some positivity with Quinnipiac from 3-point range. They're shooting 26.5% from 3. Last year, they shot closer to 35% from 3-point range. I don't think that they're going to be approaching 35% from the outside, but I do think that these guys, and last year as a collective, shot about 35% from 3 with much of the same guys, sans Matt Blondich. We should be seeing this go northward, and Quinnipiac at home is allowing opponents to shoot about 38.3% from 3-point range. Their 3-point shooting defense has actually been quite deplorable this year, and so has Siena's. Siena, 313th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, so both of these teams have been a little bit less than savory with that regard. Now, if you look at Siena and their total possessions per game, right now they are checking in that neighborhood about 200th in the country with this regard, 220th to be exact, but they have played a lot of overtime sessions, so they're actually a little bit slower than what that number would indicate. Meanwhile, for Quinnipiac, more around 104th, so this is a Quinnipiac team that's looking to play a little bit more up-tempo, but I think that Siena, with all that they've got in the backcourt, going to be able to hold up in this game. You've got Major Freeman, Justice Schultz, who have been able to combine for a little bit over 29 points per game, and Schultz shoots 39% from 3-point range, as old Siena shooting about 33.5% from the outside. Their issue is against Otinha and Monroe, they don't have a single guy that give you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. You've been able to get good versatility though out of Brendan Coyle, 4.5 rebounds, shooting 42% from 3-point range. I really like what I've seen out of him recently as he's gone off for a combined 41 points over the last 3 games. I think that he's going to be able to help this team remain lively. And then down low, Peter Carey, though he doesn't give you a lot in terms of rebounding, has been able to give the team a little bit over a block per contest, and is coming off of it really his best efforts of the season. Over the last 3 games, he's been able to give the team a combined 36 points. I do think that Siena, with getting a little bit more down low, they're going to be able to hold up at the point of attack, and I do think that this is going to be a game where both of these teams do see a little bit of an uptick with regards to their 3-point shooting. So I'm going to be in on this total over. I set my total at 141.5, and at a 4+, I'm going to be willing to take those points with Siena. 893, 894 on the betting board. Maryland plays us to UCLA. UCLA is an underdog of 5 to 5.5 points. Total on this game is 139, and I did set my total 136. I'm in on the under. UCLA coming off of by far their worst offensive effort of the year. A few days ago, they were at home against Michigan, and they got completely punked. But despite that effort, this team is still number 6 in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And if you're looking at things just in terms of a road/neutral court setting, still a top 20 team in the country with that regard. And Maryland's metrics across the board have been very good thus far this season. For this Maryland bunch, in terms of points allowed per possession, they're number 5 in all of college basketball. And when you look at their games at home and home alone, and they have played against some bad teams at home, like Maryland, Eastern Shore, what have you, they are number 4 in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Still a top 25 team in terms of points scored per possession as well. You've got Derek Queen, who has been able to do a good job of teaming up with Julian Reese. Download these guys, have been able to give you north of 16 rebounds per game as a tandem. So I do think that they're going to do a nice job there. But this UCLA team does a really nice job of being able to generate turnovers. Top 5 team in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis against the Maryland team that's done a nice job protecting the ball. Only about 9.9 turnovers per game. Jacoby Gillespie has been really good in the backcourt for this team. 4 assists, stealing at per contest. Shoots 41% from three-point range. Meanwhile, Celton Miguel, along with Rodney Rice, combined for 24 points per game. Rice shoots about 35% from 3. Miguel shoots about 41% from the outside. And the big key, in my opinion, for UCLA is being able to guard the three-point line, because I don't think that they're going to get the same amount of turnovers that they typically get in a game. But for UCLA, they allow opponents to shoot only about 31% from three-point range away from home. I think that's going to keep them lively in this game. But with the overall travel in this game, with the overall spot, it does make it very difficult on this UCLA team to be able to generate offense against a Maryland team that at home teams are shooting just 28% from three-point range against them. Tyler Bilodeau has really good versatility for UCLA, 14.5 points, 5.5 boards. Shoots 40% from 3. They were dealing with a little bit of an injury to Eric Daly. He's shooting north of 40% from 3, but he should be all good to go in this game. About 11.5 points per contest. But what are you going to be able to get out of the poo-poo platter of guards? Like Kobe Johnson has been a stat sheet stuff for 2 steals, 8 points, 6 rebounds per game. Sky Clark, about 2.5 assists, 6.5 points per game. Dylan Andrews, closer to 7 points, 2.5 assists per contest. It's been a little bit up down all around for UCLA. But UCLA looking to play a little bit more slowly. And despite the fact that Maryland has been able to really pop off with regards to their offense, this is not a team that's going to be out of the sorts with regards to their overall tempo. About 125th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. So I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a lower scoring slog. A semi-total at a 136. I'm in on the under. And with this Maryland team, willing to lay up to 5.5 with them, set them as a 6-point favorite. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games. This is 895, 896. Toledo is going to be playing us to Central Michigan. And Central Michigan does find themselves as a underdog in the spot. You're going to be finding them in that neighborhood of about a 4-point underdog, seeing some 4.5s popping up as well. Total on this game is between 151.5 to a 152, and now I'm seeing some 5s starting off as well. Toledo open up as a 3-point favorite. 5 is my buy point on Central Michigan. Personally, if I'm left between a 4 and a 5, I would rather lay 4 with Toledo rather than take 5 with Central Michigan, but looks like that is going to be completely dried up by the time this podcast drops, and I'd be willing to take a 5 here with Central Michigan, a team that has seen a little bit of a drop-off with regards to their defense. Central Michigan lies here a top 150 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis this season. They have been outside the top 200 with that regard, but this has been a Central Michigan team that, to their credit, they've been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to find some three-point shooting of their own, and as we know, this is a Toledo team that they always give up quite a bit of production on the defensive side of things as well. 313th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and for the Toledo team, in games at home specifically, this team is in the bottom 10 in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. I did, as a result, make my total a 152.5, so right now seeing that 151.5, 152. I'm going to be in on the over. Central Michigan, still not necessarily like the most supreme team offensively, but Jacoby Heady, along with Anthony Pritchard in the backcourt, these two guys have been able to combine to give you about 25.5 points per contest. Pritchard shoots 35% from 3, and for Central Michigan, they do need to clean up the 14 turnovers a game. Toledo outside the top 225 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. You've been able to get good production out of the 6'10" big man Uganis Jarasivius, who's been able to give you about 12.5 points, 6.5 boards, shoots 33% from three-point range at 6'10", and for Toledo, this is just not the same three-point shooting team that we've seen in past years. They're not bad. They shoot 33% from three-point range, but again, not amazing. Your main guys have been Sonny Wilson along Sam Lewis. Lewis, your top three-point shooter at 6'6", 14.5 points, 5.5 boards. I've been liking what I've been seeing out of him. And Wilson, a little bit of a do-it-all player in the backcourt. 4.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 15.5 points per game, but I do think that Toledo is going to get smashed on the glass. This has been a Central Michigan team that has been able to do a relatively solid job there. Meanwhile, for Toledo, their rebound rate right now in all of college basketball is ranking 350 first. So I do think that Central Michigan holds up their end of the bargain on the glass. They're able to keep things relatively lively, and I think that both of these teams are going to be able to find some wide open looks from three-point range. It is a Central Michigan team that, by the way, against E1 competition, 83 plus points allowed in 3 of their last 4 games. And for this Toledo team, they went through a little bit of a funk offensively. Their defense giving up points has been in no funk whatsoever, though. 78 plus given up in 4 of their last 5 games and 70 plus in each of their last 5. So in on the over, and I'm going to be willing to take 5 plus here with Central Michigan. Now we get the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306, 547, 306, 548. It is Wagner, and they're going to be on the road facing off against Central Connecticut. Central Connecticut, a 9.5 point favorite. Total on this game is 120. Semi-total 117.5. I'm in on the under. Wagner, a bottom 10 team in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, well outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game. And Central Connecticut is a slower tempo team that has been clocking in the top 150 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. I did set Central Connecticut as a 9.5 point favorite. Right now we're seeing that number exactly on a 9.5. If we could get down to a 9, because I'm doing this on very early openers, willing to lay it, and I would rather lay a 9 rather than take a 10 personally, because with this Wagner team, even though they've had a few injuries and they've got most of these guys back in the fold, RJ Green has been able to give you about 9 points per contest. Javier Esquera has actually given you about 5 assists, only about 2 turnovers per contest. You just don't know what you're going to be able to get out of the seam down low. As for Central Connecticut, it's not like these guys are monsters of the midway or anything like that, but you've got good balance overall. Out of your top 4 scorers, 3 of them give you at least 4.2 rebounds per game. You've got 10.5 points, 4 boards out of Jaden Brown, who's been able to do a nice job with his overall versatility. It's a Central Connecticut team that is functional with regards to offense. They shoot 34% from 3-point range, top 125 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, with Joe Ostrowski doing a nice job generating turnovers. He gives you about 2.5 assists, 0.5 per contest. Even though he's not a major scorer with 7 points per game, he's really been able to set the, shall we say, foundation for this team. And then you've been able to get a little bit under a block and a half per contest, 5.5 boards and 8.5 points per game out of Abdul Mamoa at 6'7". Good versatility there for this Wagner team. They're just looking for answers with regards to their offense, as against D1 teams, because they have played against plenty of non-Division 1 teams, but against D1 teams specifically, this is a team that has gotten past the 62-point plateau, I believe, once as far as the season. Actually, twice. They've gotten past 62 twice because they scored 63 against Maryland and Eastern Shore, but I do think that the Clamps are going to be put down once again by a Central Connecticut team that has allowed 63 points or fewer themselves in 4 of their last 5 games. So at 9 or less, willing to lay with Central Connecticut. Set my total at 117.5 and on the under. 306, 549, 306, 550. It is St. Francis of Pennsylvania, and they play us the Mercyhurst. Mercyhurst right now finds themselves as 2 to 2.5 point underdogs. Total on this game, you're going to be finding that in the neighborhood of 137 to 137.5. I set my total 137, so you're at 137.5 and on the under, but wrote this one up. I am willing to lay it with St. Francis of Pennsylvania. I set them as a 7-point favorite, and I think it all comes back to 3-point shooting in this game. With Mercyhurst on the road, they are outside the top 330 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. And for St. Francis, Pennsylvania, they shoot as a collective against D1 foes about 33.7% from 3-point range. They're in the non-D1 games closer to about 34.5% from the outside. But the guy that has really been able to elevate this team has been Riley Parker. Parker has come in as a non-D1 transfer, shot about 39.5% from 3-point range, 11 points, 3.5 boards, 4 assists per game, and he's able to lend some support to Bobby Rosenberg, who has to do a little bit of everything for this team. 12.5 points, 2 assists, 4.5 rebounds per game. But now you've been able to get back in the fold one of your main rebounders as well, Valentino Pinedo, who comes over from East Carolina. He was out of the lineup for about 5 or so games this season. He's been able to come back, and he's been able to give this team an instant impact down the 5+ rebounds and a double-figure amount of points in each of the last 4 games that he's been playing in. And on the flip side for Mercyhurst, you just don't have a lot of size with this team. They're another team that they come up from the D2 ranks, so they're trying to be able to get a little bit more versatility, a little bit more size. You've got Aiden Reichard, who's right now the lone guy on the roster that gives you 5+ rebounds per game, 12.5 points, 5 boards, and does shoot 40% from 3. And for Mercyhurst, they do a nice job of being able to protect the ball. They only turn the ball over about 11 times per contest. They do a solid job of generating some live ball turnovers, as well as Jeff Planutis has been your main man. This man has been able to give you about 15 points at about 6'6". He shoots in the high 30s from 3-point range, so I've been liking what I've been seeing there. But other than Mr. Rathan Mays, who began his career over at Youngstown State, Shamar Rathan Mays, they don't have a lot of Division I experience, as he's been able to give the team 3.5 assists per game, but only about 7 points, shoots below 20% from 3-point range. It's the St. Francis of Pennsylvania team that certainly has their warts. They're outside the top 250 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on on a per possession basis, and this has been a team that against E1 competition has failed to get past 60 in 3 of their last 4 games, but kind of Mercyhurst team that has the exact same issue. They have scored 60 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games as well, so it's a good old situation of something he's got to give. At a 137.5 or higher, I'm going to be in on the under. Mercyhurst is a team that's outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game, and if you go back to the play that they had at the Division II level, they were always a more slow and controlled defensive team, but with them not guarding the 3-point line against St. Francis of Pennsylvania, I do think that St. Francis gets the job done. I'm willing to lay it with St. Francis. I wrote that up, and I'm going to be in on this total under as well, so by total 137, 36-551, 36-552. Fairleigh Dickinson on the road against Moyne. Moyne does find themselves as a favorite of about 1 to 1.5 points. So on this game, you're going to be fighting between 155.5 to a 156. Set Moyne as a 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 1 with them. Now, Fairleigh Dickinson has covered all but 2 of their games thus far this season. They have been a bulldozer against the spread. It said, I wonder how long they're going to be able to keep this up because they're well outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, they run it, they gun it, and they've got a guy that is one of the more underrated mid-major players in all of college basketball in Terrence Brown. A little bit over 3 assists, 6 rebounds, 21.5 points per contest. Shoots about 33% from 3-pointers, but this guy's on a burner run. This guy has been able to give you at least 20 points in now all but 1 out of his last 5 games. And if you want to go 19 points, he has had 19 plus points in all but 2 out of the team's last 12 games, and he scored 18 plus in all but 2 of the games as far this season. He's gotten into double figures in every one of them. This guy has been consistent as it gets. Joel Manuel has been able to give you about 4.5 boards and 1.5 points per contest, but this is a Fairleigh Dickinson team that they're going to get plowed on the glass. Now, this is not some sort of a Lemoyne team that is going to be the Mona Lisa Vitos of being able to hit the glass or anything like that, but for Lemoyne, they've been able to give you a lot more when they've been at home rather than on the road. They are right now 329th in the country in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage. That is a big giant drop-off from a season ago, but they do go up against a Fairleigh Dickinson team that certainly has been giving it up from 3-point range, as this is a Fairleigh Dickinson team that at home they allow opponents to shoot 46% from 3-point range. On the road they allow opponents to shoot less than 30% from 3-point range. So that has been one of the more interesting and stark comparisons in all of college basketball. I do think that those two are going to iron out, and for this Fairleigh Dickinson team, where they're actually really softest is down low. Fairleigh Dickinson 336th in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, with Lemoyne not having a lot in terms of outside shooting from their main point guard in Zach Tekken, who has been able to give you 4 assists per contest, comes in from Siena, but not really giving you a lot from the outside. This team is going to be looking to go a little bit more down low. Dwayne Karama has been able to give you 11.5 points, 6.5 rebounds per contest. This is a Lemoyne team that has been allowing a lot of second and third chances themselves, but with Fairleigh Dickinson not really having a lot of size, that's not going to be as much of a concern here. And then with regards to Lemoyne as well, you've been able to have Robbie Carpenter when he's been out there on the floor, be able to give you quite a bit of something, as he's been one of your top 3-point shooters, along with AJ Dantzler. These 2 guys combined to shoot 40% from 3-point range. These guys have been in and out of the lineup, but being able to get Dantzler back after he was dealing with a little bit of an injury, with Carpenter coming on strong, he's been able to give the team 8+ points in every game since he was able to return as well. I do think that this Lemoyne team has been banged up throughout the season finds a way to get the job done. I did set Lemoyne as a 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 1 with them. This is a Fairleigh Dickinson team that's in the top 50 with regards to total possessions per game, and Lemoyne is not shy of running either. 76th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, so set a 157.5 total in on the over and in on Lemoyne up to -1, and we wrap things up with 3 of 6, 553, 3 of 6, 554. Sono plays also Long Island, another game that I wrote up. Long Island is an underdog of 4 to 4.5 points, and John's game going to be fighting it at a 133 to 133.5. I wrote up the over. I set my total 138.5. This Long Island team is outside the top 200 in terms of total possessions per game, and this has been a Long Island team that has been able to improve their defense to their credit, but that said, I do think that with Stone Hill, the way that they have been really allowing it from 3-point range, it is going to allow this Long Island team to remain lively. I'd be willing to lay up to 4 here because this is a Long Island team that, is shooting about 30% from 3-point range. You've been able to get quite a bit of production from the top flight guys, but it is a Long Island team that they're now just getting back Brent Davis. Brent Davis, one of the better players in terms of generating turnovers in all of college basketball over the last few seasons. Last year over at Chicago State was able to generate over a steal per contest. You've got Malachi Davis, who's been able to give this Long Island team right around about 3 boards, 3 assists, 17 points per contest, but he only shoots about 26.5% from 3-point range, and this has been a Stonehill team that's done a pretty solid job of being able to light it up from 3-point range. Joshua Morgan, who comes on over from Incarnate Word, he's done a nice job of being able to help out with that, as he's given the team 13.5 points, shoots 40% from 3, and as a matter of fact, for Stonehill, each of your top 4 scorers all shoot at least 39% from 3-point range. That includes Todd Boronga, who's been able to give you 6.5 boards, 12.5 points per contest. Love what I'm seeing out of him. Stonehill turns the ball over about 12.5 times per contest. Not too bad there, but this is also also a team that in Stone Hill is 305th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis on their own floor. You've got Amir Nesbitt, who's been able to dole out some nice, clean offense. And really, for the Stone Hill team, it's a whole is greater than the sum of its parts sort of facilitation method, as they've got 5 different guys that give you at least 1.7 assists per contest. They don't necessarily have a guy that gives you north of 3 assists per game, but the guy that's really starting to grow on me a little bit more has been Luis Simona. He's saying 6'8". He shoots about 42% from 3-point range. This guy's shipped in there 12 plus points in each of the last 5 games. He's been able to give the team a combined 9 assists over the last 4 games as well. I really like what he's able to bring to the table. And for this Long Island team, you just don't have the versatility or the size to be able to match up there, as you've got Shadark Lassou, who's been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game. But other than that, you don't have a lot down low. So do you think that that's going to be an issue for Long Island? Additionally, with this Long Island team, they're coming off of giving up fewer than 40 points to Chicago State, but in a nip and tuck game, they only shoot right around about 67.5% of the free throw line, and Stone Hill has been very sure-handed in terms of doing the little things quite well thus far this season, as at the free throw line, they're shooting more than that neighborhood, about 70.5% at the free throw line, with each of your top 4 scorers shooting at least 75.8%. So we'll lay up to 4 with Stone Hill. With regards to Stone Hill, wrote it up. I am in on the over as well, and that'll wrap things up for the Friday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. A big thanks to Blake Lovell, who does great work over at Southeastern 16. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, whatever for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GNet_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to on this podcast by that 5-star review, and I'm coming at you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and off season, which means I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.